How do you know whether a dream is actually yours or one that you've borrowed from everybody else? I've been thinking about that this week because over the past weekend, a bunch of my friends and I, we rented a massive Airbnb for one of my friends' bachelor parties, and it ended up teaching me something that I wasn't expecting. The house was incredible, first of all. I think it had everything you could ask for. A swimming pool, a sauna, a huge backyard, multiple lounges, games rooms. The kind of place where you just enter and you immediately knew the owners came from a lot of money. And growing up, I think most of us look at a place like that and we think, one day, one day that's the goal, or like, one day that's what success is supposed to look like. And we had an amazing time there. I remember on the first night, I found myself sitting outside and just looking at the property. And I remember asking myself this one question. If someone were to hand me over the keys to a place like that, would I eventually want it? And to my surprise, the answer was no, I don't think I would. And there was nothing wrong with the property. It was beautiful. But I just realized that it wasn't the life I was imagining anymore. If you were to have asked me that question maybe 4 years ago, I would have probably said yes without thinking twice. But something feels different. I still want to build something meaningful. I still want to be successful. But somewhere along the journey, the definition of success has changed for me. I've realized that I'm chasing a feeling more than I'm chasing a number. I'd much rather have a house that's surrounded by nature, that's peaceful to come home to, rather than owning something simply because the world told me it was impressive. And I think Airbnb does that really well. Over a weekend, you get to step into someone else's life. Naturally, sometimes you leave wanting more, and sometimes you leave realizing that the goal was never yours to begin with. And I think that thought stayed with me for the rest of the weekend because it also made me realize that most of my friends are now getting married. They're stepping into a new chapter of their lives, and naturally, things change. People have families, priorities shift. You don't stop being friends, but you also know that things won't quite look the same anymore. A couple years ago, that thought would have probably unsettled me, would have probably made me realize that I needed to catch up or that I needed to see someone because everyone I knew was doing the same thing. But this time that didn't happen. I was genuinely happy for him, and I think that happened because for the first time in a long time, I've learned to stand still. I haven't looked over my shoulder to see if I was keeping up with everyone else's timeline. And I don't think that happens overnight, but I do think it's happened because I've learned to spend more time by myself. When you spend enough time alone, you eventually start asking yourself better questions. What do I even like? What kind of home do I want? What kind of life would make me feel fulfilled? Not the life that just looks good from the outside, but the life that actually feels right when you're the one that's living it. Because I don't think those are very different questions. In fact, it's one of the biggest things that solitude has given me. Because it is incredibly easy to live a life and chase something that was never yours to begin with. So let me leave you with this. How much of the life that you're chasing was chosen by you? And how much of it was chosen for you? Think about it. And thank you for listening. I'll see you guys next week.